Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Captain Logan Show. I am indeed Captain Logan. Tonight, we're doing a Superman theme show. We're going to answer your questions about anything and everything Superman, at least to the best of my ability. And let me introduce, as always, our charismatic and pragmatic chat moderator, Danny Nixon. Hello, Danny.
Hey, everybody. I'm not always here, but I am pragmatic. I don't know about charismatic, but I
guess I said as always, as usual, as normal, generally speaking. Danny is almost always here, and the only reason he didn't make it last week is because we had to start too late and he couldn't make that time. So last week I did a show with Eric, which was really fun to have him on the program. We're back to kind of our normal show. We're back to our normal time. We're back to sort of our normal format, except we're doing a theme show this time. And for a while there, when these were in the afternoons, we were doing a lot of theme shows, and we started getting a lot of requests to take it back to general Q&A, and that's been going really well. And Danny, I still marvel at the lack of repeat questions. People pop into the show and they have insightful things, and they have lots of interesting things to ask and talk about, and really gets my brain going. All the various things we end up. It feels like a multi-topic extravaganza every single week on the show.
Yeah, it really does. And it's amazing the amount of questions that just keep coming. And obviously, if your question doesn't get answered, you're free to ask it again at a later time. But we get so many different questions. I very rarely see like questions that are from the last week pop up again if it didn't get answered. Usually they want to hear something else or gets discussed somewhere else on the channel. And
importantly, we've never, ever gotten to all of them.
No.
And especially with super chats. Speaking of, we've got one of those right now. So before we do that, let me talk about the theme show thing. We're going to keep doing theme shows occasionally. This is going to start being more of like a once a month thing, and we'll do the open forum more often than this. So tonight, finally, a theme show. And also, Danny, I just assume at some point I'm going to completely run out of topics.
Yeah, you got to space it out.
Makes sense for me to talk about for a full hour. So tonight, Superman, anything and everything related to that character. It can be comic book stuff, it can be TV and movie stuff. I will go on record to say, as a lot of you folks probably know already, I've always been more of a screen Superman fan than a comic Superman fan, but obviously I know some stuff about that too. So anything and everything, anything you guys want to talk about is cool. And so we're going to do pre-written questions, meaning not super chat. Anything that comes in that is not a super chat related to Superman, we will get to if we can, if we have time. We will only be answering non-Superman related questions that are given to us by way of super chat. So if there's something you really are burning to ask, and here we talk about that is not about Superman, you can do that through the super chat, and that is open, and we sure appreciate everybody for helping us out that way. That has done that in the past and might do that this evening. We got a $4.99 one from Ross Hitchcock there, Danny.
Yes, and his question is, Cap, your thoughts on the Captain Marvel pictures and the Skrulls?
I only glanced at them briefly. Somebody sent me those today, and I saw them while I was in the middle of something else, and I don't immediately have like a real interesting response. It all looks fine to me. I mean, I think more or less we kind of knew what that costume was going to look like, so that was not a big surprise, but it looks fine. Eric said he thought the Skrulls looked a little too yellow. My reservation talking about set pictures like this is always, we don't know what the color correction is going to look like. We don't know what the filters are going to look like. So, like, more or less, we have an idea of kind of what the designs of these things are. What they're actually going to look like in the context could certainly be very different. And it's kind of like that Apocalypse thing where everybody said he looked too much like Ivan Ooze, and then in the context of the movie, it looked okay. I'm not the biggest fan of that movie, but I didn't have a huge problem with his costume design and makeup and stuff. But Danny, do you have any initial reaction to that? Did you see him?
Yeah, I looked at him. This is the first time, I guess I'm behind the times on this movie, but this is the first time I saw the suit as in the traditional colors. Before this, I had only seen that tealish black one that they were using.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I couldn't remember if we'd seen that in color or not.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of what I just assumed were like fan edits in the traditional colors, and I just assumed, okay, because it's set in the 90s, that they're not doing the full costume, and she'll get that whenever we see her in present day. But it was a nice surprise for me to see that they're doing the accurate colors, at least. And as far as the Skrulls go, I have no opinion.
Yeah, I guess people kind of expected they are surprised by that because of, like you said, the green thing that we saw before. They figured we wouldn't actually get to really see that costume. There was never any doubt in my mind that they were going to use the correct colors, especially because the thing at the end, spoiler alert for Infinity War, but the colors on the screen are red and black. Like I figured we'd get that, and like you said, like I guess it could be like a later modern thing, yeah. But I don't know. It would have been a really weird choice to not have those colors, to not do the kind of what am I trying to say, like
classic color scheme.
Yeah, and you know, just more kind of, you know, like American colors. Like you'd figure, as we're probably eventually phasing out Captain America, that could end up sort of being our stand-in for Captain America, and so it would be really weird if in her first outing we didn't have the patriotic colors.
Yeah, and one of the pictures, I don't want to give too much away, but they kind of give some context for what that original teal-ish suit was and why she's wearing that. And after I saw that set photo, I was like, okay, it makes sense why she's wearing that there, or why she'll wear it at some points in the movie. So for people, I know there are people in the chats who don't want to have too much spoiled. I'm gonna try to be vague and not give too much of what you see in those photos away. So if you've seen them, you know what I'm talking about. If not, hopefully I haven't ruined anything for you.
Yeah, I just always have a hard time not kind of turning my brain off until I see the movie, if that makes any sense. You know, like I don't like to turn my brain off when I see a movie, but before the thing comes out, I have such a wait and see attitude that I don't want to immediately start making assumptions and things. And then you get to the movie and it's like, oh yes, of course. I don't like to jump the gun.
Yeah. So at least what I saw, it seemed to be something that made sense for what it is. I could be, completely wrong, but yeah, anyways, getting into the actual like Superman questions.
Yeah, let's do that, shall we?
Yeah.
And again, guys, super chats anytime during the show. We'll jump to those immediately after whatever the topic is we're talking about right now. Go ahead, Danny.
Okay, from Dimitri J. Do you think the death of Superman on screen can ever have a big impact on the general public after BVS kind of ruined it?
Hi, Dimitri. How you doing, man? Good to hear from you. I think it would take probably a whole other franchise, right? Like if we did, I mean, obviously you would want to do it again, you know, inside of the DCEU, but I would obviously wait some years. I kind of am questioning how much of Death of Superman nostalgia is really still permeating or not, because people don't seem to get as excited about that as they used to, and as I used to, and I think maybe it's just being burned a lot of times, where, I mean, not that we've realized it on screen that many times, but we've done it 3 times now, and it's never been great. And I think people are more and more, I think, remembering that as a novelty thing before they're remembering it as a great story that needs to be put on screen. And I think those of us, even those of us that love that material, and that's kind of our Superman. I mean, I've always said when I was a kid, I was like Batman to Superman, and I had that period where I always said I didn't really care for Superman, and he had to die before I cared about him. And the whole world without Superman thing was a big deal to me, because I felt as a kid reading that like, oh, this is a big icon that is important, and I actually cared about and didn't realize I did, and oh no, and maybe it was kind of, you know, drinking the Kool-Aid thing where that is what the book is telling you, right? But as a kid, I was like, oh no, we can't live in a world without Superman. That would be the worst, you know. And so like they really won me over with that. I have never. And we're going to review the Death of Superman movie that just came out a few weeks ago on the Omnibus this week. So look forward to that. But I said this there too. It just doesn't. That didn't recapture my feelings reading that story in any way. It kind of just felt representative, and it's not terrible, but it kind of just felt representative. And so it's hard to get excited now about even wanting to see that created again. Like I know, Danny, I forget if you told me that you had this. The first time I saw BVS, it was hard to be, as I've said before, completely objective about it, because that was the thing I never thought I'd get to see on the big screen. And
I saw it 3 times in theaters. Loved it every time I saw it. I was not objective when I was watching that movie at all.
Yeah, and of course it was shoehorned in. It was forced in at the end. It was, everything about it was counterintuitive. It was a really bizarre move to cram that in with everything else that was in that movie. And and especially because it was kind of an incoherent mess. And then it just makes it kind of hard for me to get excited about it again because you can't surprise me with it now. Like if you tried to surprise people with it, it would be okay. We're doing this again. Like that's the thing people know about Superman. Of course, we're doing this again. I mean, we knew Doomsday was in that movie, and I wasn't expecting that. You know, so either that or B, it would be a movie sold on that, and I'm not sure that's the place to do it now. I would do it in a season of television. If you did it anywhere. So I don't know. Like I think you could tell that story well. I don't think it will ever be a big deal now. Is kind of my thinking at the moment.
We've had two movies specifically about the death of Superman in animation. We've had one movie that does it and kind of gets mocked for how it does it because it didn't handle it very well. I think it's not going to mean anything to anyone until we have like a Marvel level DC universe where I think Captain America, if he ever dies in the MCU, which he probably will, I think people will have a reaction to his death the way people ideally should to seeing Superman die on the big screen. And I don't think it's until probably at least a decade out from now where we've got an established Superman, we've got an established universe that he lives in, where he finally dies, that it has any kind of where it resonates with anyone in the general audience outside of course we're killing Superman. So I kind of think it's something that they've gone to the well one too many times with, three too many times with, and it's kind of lost some of that, some of that impact that it's supposed to have, especially because we can't really seem to do the story either on its own or kind of do it right. I haven't seen the newest Death of Superman, so maybe I'm being too harsh on that just from what I've heard other people say. So I'm not going to give my full opinion on that. But what I've seen in Superman Doomsday and then BVS, it's not really handled the best that I think that story should be.
Yeah, and the reason the Death of Superman part is important is just that it happened. It's not even so much how it happened. There's iconic imagery and stuff, and it was a big deal that it wasn't kryptonite. But beyond that, the interesting part of Death of Superman is what happens afterwards. It's the other two acts of that story. It's the funeral for a friend, and then it's Reign of the Superman. And we seem to think that that what people really want to see is just Doomsday ripping into Superman, and even that still has not really been done in a real impactful way. So yeah. Anyway, we should probably move on. But it's sad. Like it's a thing that I feel like I should say I still want to see realized, and I kind of don't know if I even care anymore.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of like seeing the Spider-Man origin. We've seen it enough already, even if it's not always the best, or even if you look back on 02 and it's not super great, or it's cheesy looking at it now. I don't need to see it again, even if it hasn't been fully realized to how I see it. Like I do think. Let me say this real quick. I do think it's crazy if we never do it in the Supergirl TV show. I think that's crazy. I think it should happen there, and I'm a little bit surprised that they've not gone there yet because they have a Superman who's really good in that show, who's only, as far as I know, shown up once and is gonna at the end of this year show up again, and they want to do a Supergirl show where they don't have to rely on Superman, but they do have a Superman in the background, and it kind of feels like they rely on that to some degree, even while they pretend like they don't. Death of Superman would be a fantastic season arc for that show. Yeah, that would be a good idea, but I'm worried that they may be saving Death of for a Death of Superwoman thing and save that for like one of the big 4-show crossovers.
Well, that wouldn't be terrible either, I guess.
I mean...
But what's nice about doing Death of Superman in that show is, then like Kara has to step up, and now she's got to be, everything Superman was to people. She's got to be that icon for everybody, and you have a superhero to be your eyes in for that story. So when you you can still do Reign of the Superman or whatever if you really wanted to. I mean, we have a character named Cyborg Superman in that show that doesn't have a cyborg face, but still, or a Superman face. I guess he has a cyborg face. He doesn't have a Superman face, and he says, "I'm Cyborg Superman." And I don't understand that, and that has always cracked me up, and I will not stop making fun of it. But, you could do all that stuff, but you wouldn't have to just kind of wait around for, like the superhero characters to lead you through that story. Like, you'd already have one. I think that'd be cool. Anyway, I've been talking about this for too long. Go ahead.
The next super chat from Thomas Edgehill. What kind of Superman story that hasn't been done or that you think could be improved upon would you like to see? Also, the Captain Logan Show is super awesome, and I have to agree.
Yeah, well, Danny Nixon's a little bit biased.
Just a little bit, just a little bit.
And Danny liked the show okay before he was actually on camera, but
yeah, now that I can see my head, I'm like ego now.
There's only one like 5-star rating anywhere about the show on the internet, and I suspect that Danny wrote that. I'm kidding. That's not a thing.
I actually left it 7 stars.
So, Superman comic story that I'd like to see on the big screen, or just anywhere rendered, or
I think just anywhere. He just says Superman story.
But did you say adapted?
No, just what kind of Superman story that hasn't been done, or that you could, or that could be improved upon, would you like to see?
Oh, okay. So we're not even talking about necessarily on film.
No, and I think the way it's said is one that we haven't even just seen in general, like in comics, TV shows.
Okay, so improved upon. Okay, so this is really funny because let me go to the first part of this. The first part of this I didn't think had been done, and then somebody requested a Superman comic for the omnibus that I just reviewed, and it did it. And that is what in the world does the culture of the bottle city of Kandor look like while it's on Earth? And that has actually been done, it turns out. And where is that book? Because I'm actually blanking suddenly on the. It's not sitting here anymore. That was Superman Godfall, which I liked quite a bit, and like I said, talk about on the omnibus this week. But so yeah, that would have been my answer maybe. But then I read it. But I'll think a little bit about that story. I'd like to see improved on. You can do so much more with President Lex. Jeff Loeb kind of messed that up by the end, and that's my big one. I would love to see like a retelling of that in like shorter, like six 8-issue miniseries kind of thing, sort of like the Spider-Man Clone Saga was redone, and I don't know if it was redone well because I didn't read that, but I'd like to see that treatment done with President Lex and actually tell a beginning, middle, end, you know, all like inclusive story as opposed to just it being the status quo for a while. I think it would be really cool to see what that would look like.
Yeah, now seems like the perfect time for them to do that, and I'm kind of surprised they didn't jump on that when they did Rebirth. I guess maybe it was one of those like low-hanging fruit things, and they were like, no, that's too obvious to go back to President Lex now. But I'd like to see that done.
Well, you're right. It would be easy to do now because, well, okay, let me say this real quick because it's confusing, okay? I don't know if President Lex technically happened in the current continuity.
Yeah, if it did, I guess he couldn't run again, could he? Unless he served the full 8 term. I don't.
He didn't serve a full 8 years. He was obviously like run off and blackballed and, you know, killed a bunch of people with his big mech robot, or at least ran around with his big mech robot. So, I mean, that should preclude you from being, you know, worthy of the nomination again, I would think. But then, he had been more of a good guy recently with Rebirth, so you know you could play that any way you wanted to, I guess, and kind of we do this a lot, obviously, in comics and especially DC stuff, where we'll kind of forget things that we don't like and cherry pick. But no, you had that thing where with Rebirth where we mixed both continuities together with Jurgens stuff, and that brought Death of Superman back into the continuity because of course Jurgens wanted to write all of his Jurgens stuff and bring all that back in, and I think that's awful. I loved that run, okay, until we got to that, and then it's a mess, and it's kind of McFarlane level retconning. But I would it would be difficult to hazard a guess as whether or not Lex was ever actually president in this continuity.
If he has, here's what you do: you have him run for the House of Representatives. He wins. He becomes the Speaker of the House, and then he plans an assassination attempt against the president and the vice president, so he becomes de facto president. That's really convoluted. I'm not.
No, that's hilarious. Okay, but you've read comics way more convoluted than that. Like,
yeah. But Superman comics more convoluted than that.
Obviously, I don't like to get super political on the show, but a lot of comic fans after this last election were like, "Wow!" And I thought Lex Luthor as president was a crazy out there notion, and have kind of compared those two men. So the idea that now would be the time to do Lex again. I could say, I also think that's maybe kind of on the nose. And then the other thing you have to do is you have to see how much political commentary there's actually been in DC lately, and how often they've talked about Trump, because both companies tend to do that, where whoever is president now is president, except for when we want to actually use them as a character in that story, and then it's not the current president. We make up a president, and even the MCU does this.
Yeah. Which gets into the whole confusing thing of how many terms did Obama serve when you get to him and Luke Cage, or the reference in Luke Cage. Yeah, I guess the only place I really remember seeing anything in DC, because I haven't kept up with a whole bunch of lines from that, was like one or two mentions in like the beginning of Green Arrow Rebirth, where I guess they have like a caricature of him drawn somewhere in the background. I don't.
Oh, really? Remember. I didn't know that.
Have you read any of Green Arrow Rebirth? Because they do a kind of like,
Well, no, I did. I read a few, but I read like in the middle of it. I don't think I started from the beginning. I think I read like around 9 and 10, a few in, because I read the one issue that brought back Clock King, which is weird because they kind of reinvented Clock King, but he's sort of supposed to be the same guy, and it's weird. I liked what I read of that, but I forgot all about it. It's been a couple of years now.
Yeah, all I really remember is there's some character in the background. They don't call attention to it. That just looks like Trump, which is, I guess, supposed to be him. I don't know. It's not really that big of a call out. I'm sure there have been far more where they like directly point out to his like Twitter or something that I just haven't seen. But
the problem with doing it, part of the problem with doing it again is the way he gets elected is kind of brilliant, because he fixes Gotham after No Man's Land. And that's what gets people kind of rallying behind him. And if you try to recreate that story, there's not anything you could do that's more clever than that, I don't think.
No, I can't think of anything. Obviously, if it's more clever, I probably wouldn't be able to think.
And
of
also the Pete Ross as his vice president was a cool idea, and I don't know, just everything about it was really neat at the time. And then I kind of feel like we never did enough with it. I didn't read everything where he was president. So, and Connor just said that the President-elect's trade paperback is back in print. So I should grab that and finally read all of that stuff. But the way it ended was so bad. It was always hard for me to get excited about going back to it. What else have you got, Danny?
The next super chat from Repick. I'm sorry if I'm going to butcher your username. Reapy Cheap 775.
Reapy Cheap.
Yeah, it's do you have any advice on writing the first chapter of a novel? Mine is a big info dump right now.
Yeah, so it's really easy for that to happen, of course, because especially if you don't write yourself a whole lot of notes and write a lot of outlining before you get started, which I don't do. You're writing for yourself as much as you're writing for an audience, where you're getting your thoughts on the page, and it's really easy to go very stream of consciousness until you start to find your voice for the piece. And I'm a broken record on this. The advice I always give is get past the first chapter and come back to it. Let it be whatever it needs to be right now for you to get a solid sense of the identity of it. And first chapters and like the early chapters tend to be some of the most rewrite heavy when I revise anyway. When I did my first book, I found myself monkeying with the first few chapters a lot, like more than anything else in the book probably. And that book also doesn't even open now the same way it did when I first wrote it. Like the first chapter is not the first chapter anymore. And so I think you'll make more headway on it if you let yourself get past that first chapter and then come back to it and see how much of that info dumping is really necessary, how much of that exposition really needs to be in that first chapter, or if you can spread it across a little bit, or if it starts to get redundant where you actually dropped it in the natural places it ought to go later in organic ways, and it doesn't even it starts to get redundant. You know, that can happen too. This is a thing I also have talked about a lot, but I tend to write 2,000 or 3,000 words before the first thing that you actually need to read even shows up sometimes. And I do that with reviews probably more than I do with fiction, but that can certainly happen in fiction. So you might find that you either start writing before the thing actually really starts, or you just needed to write all that stuff out for yourself, and it's not actually going to be necessary for the reader. You can pull it out and put it someplace else.
And I have nothing else to add other than practice. Practice is always my go-to when anyone asks, how do I get better at something? So that's a very unhelpful bit of advice. The next
but it's not though, because I'll just say this real quick, because that goes with what I'm talking about. It is still progress for yourself, for any individual project, to get the things on the page that you're not going to use. I cannot stress that enough, because people tend to, you'll see people in movies with like in period pieces with typewriters, right, where they'll type out, they'll be trying to write the great American novel, and they'll type out the first paragraph like 600 times, and they keep crumbling it up and throwing it in the trash. I don't advocate starting over constantly, because I think you get into a groove, and again, you can go back and revise. But I do think that all of the stuff that doesn't work can be really important to get out of your system. And so it wasn't useless to get it down on paper, even if you never use it.
Yeah. The next question from Blue Dragon 5. Excuse me, I was reading the wrong question. Sorry about that. Have you ever read Superman American Alien? Have you gotten around to reading Superman American Alien?
I've read most of it. I'm missing issue 4 or 5 for some reason. I was buying it when it came out, and I've not read the last issue yet. I don't think I ever got to it, but I read the rest of it, and I really liked what I read. That series is really interesting in that it's a vignette series, and it's kind of Superman origin, but it's more about kind of the growing pains and then the early days of being Superman. And every issue stands on its own and is a separate story. And more, it's creating an early universe for Superman. And it's not really one big story so much as several stories that inform each other. And I liked it, what I read of it, quite a bit. Eric and I are going to review that down the road. I just haven't got the rest of it yet.
Yeah, I haven't gotten around to reading it yet. I actually, a few years ago, I ran into Max Landis at WrestleCon.
What?
When he was in Dallas for WrestleMania, I ran into him. I felt so bad because he had just lost his voice that day. And I walk up behind him and was like, excuse me, are you Max Landis? And he's like trying to like mime out, yes, I'm Max Landis. And me and my friend were like, oh man, I feel so bad. And like, he was like, no, it's okay. But I was like, I really just want to like leave you alone so you're not stressing your voice. But it was pretty cool to meet him.
Oh, that's amazing. I've never had that experience where you just run into somebody like that.
Well, it was.
That's really cool that it wasn't like just at a con or something. Like you actually legitimately ran into him.
It was at WrestleCon, the wrestling convention of the weekend of WrestleMania. So I was expecting him to be there because he's a wrestling fan.
Okay. I thought it was somebody unrelated to the event that you went to.
No, he was outside of the convention center, and I was walking out to leave, and I saw him. So I was just trying to like say hi. I'm a fan of some wrestling-related content he's done that I was looking forward to reading American Alien because I hadn't gotten around to it yet. But I felt so bad because he had lost his voice, and I didn't want to be that guy who's coming up to you when you're not feeling good and you can't talk and just like bugging him. So I tried to make it as short as I possibly could.
Yeah, it was cool that he was that gracious, though.
Oh, absolutely. I wish I had like reached out to him on Twitter or something afterwards just to thank him for not, telling me to go away like really hurriedly because he, had no voice. But yeah, he's a really cool dude from like the 5 minutes I had to interact with him.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to reviewing that. Go ahead, Danny.
Yeah. The next question is a super chat from Mr. Roboto. You consider running for office for story crafting?
for office? I mean, like, I guess if such a thing existed, perhaps I would. I don't know. I don't.
The Secretary of Fiction Writing, I guess, is that a department in the cabinet of the president?
Yeah, I don't know why I would have. I mean, like, I'm pretty sure we're just as generic as education, right? I don't think there's really different branches of that. But I don't know if like such a thing existed at a college or something. No, I would. I've always said that I would like to teach fiction writing, and I am doing that now on my own with the Geekvolution Creative Writing Workshop, which, quick plug for that, we still have some spots open if anybody is interested. If you're working on something or you'd like to start writing fiction and you'd like to see it workshopped and critiqued and get some comments from me about it, and just kind of work on honing your craft, $10 a month is what that course costs. We just did the first meeting last Friday. It went spectacularly, and we're doing another one this Friday with another group. I've got enough folks that I split it into 2 groups, but we do still have some spots open if anybody's interested in that. So just let me know. Go to Facebook, Geekvolution, send me a comment there, or send me an email, and the email address is in the is in the about information on the YouTube channel. But anyway, yeah, I don't know, kind of second career thing. I would love to go back to college and finally teach fiction writing, which I guess is like the closest to an official, like elected office you would get for that. But people ask me that question a lot, like, would you ever consider running for public office? And when I was a kid, it was a thing I think I kind of wanted to do. And I don't know, like I wouldn't say no. I would maybe consider it. But I don't know what it would be. I have no idea.
I think this question came up on a Captain Logan Show a while ago, and you had mentioned like running for like school boards or something like that. I think that might be a good fit. Depending on how much input that would realistically give you into like the education that goes on at the school. But
some things. I mean, obviously, I would do it because I would want to be helpful and give back to the community in some way. But I also would just really enjoy the experience and see what that's like. The deal with school board is I homeschool my kids. I would never win that. I mean, how easy is that debate? Well, that jerk face doesn't even send his children to public school.
Yeah, do we really want him to tells it like it is?
Yeah. Right? Yeah. I'm on school board because I think the public school system is so bad that we shouldn't even that I won't even put my kids in it, and that's why you should vote for me. No, I would never win that, right?
You would be surprised at the amount of people who would look at that and say, yeah, this is someone who sees how bad the school system is and wants to make it better because he doesn't feel comfortable sending his own kids. People. I'm
not saying that there are no positive aspects of certain parts of the public school system, but I do have my qualms with it, and I have various reasons that I homeschool my kids, and I don't really want to get into that. And I guess it's my fault. I brought that up, but anyway,
I brought that up. I bring up the school board,
thing. Yeah, but man, you might be right, but it wouldn't be enough to get you elected. I mean, that would just be. I thought about this before, and I always chuckle because I just imagine my opponent. If I were that guy's opponent, that's what I would say. Well, that guy doesn't even send his kids to public school.
He doesn't even live in this district. Technically, he can't even run.
I think that's hilarious.
How do you get on the ballot? I think you have to have like petitions anyways to get on the ballot. So. You may not even be able to. I don't know.
I bet he couldn't even tell you what the divide is, what the lines are, like what district his kids would go to. I bet he couldn't even tell you. And no, right now I could not tell you that.
Run for school board in Missouri.
Yeah, I couldn't do that. I live in Kansas.
That would make it even better. No.
Although what's funny about that is I actually live right on the line. So my wife works in Missouri. We live 10 minutes from the line. Sometimes I don't know if I'm in Kansas or Missouri when I'm driving around.
Do y'all have a state line road like Texarkana does?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah,
it's called State Line Road.
Really? Because it's the same.
No, State Line is the thing. Yeah, I had to think for a second because I've never really. I mean, like. Obviously, intellectually, I understand that that's why it's called State Line, but like that's just a street in my mind. I'm like, oh yes, of course. I guess that is why it's called State Line Road.
Oh man.
Anyway, let's get back to Superman, shall we?
Yeah, Daniel Davis, awesome first name. Any Superman villains you want to see in films? I know his rogue gallery isn't the best. It's been woefully underrepresented in film. Personally, I'd love to finally see Brainiac in live action.
Yeah, Brainiac is the obvious go-to, and it's one of those things where I want to get really excited about that, but every time we do a Brainiac reveal in anything else, I'm always like, oh yes, of course, we're just doing Brainiac again. if we did it the animated series way and we connected it to Krypton, and you opened with like, I mean, I don't want to sit here and write the movie, but you opened like that show does, and you had Brainiac as like the computer that runs everything on Krypton, and then he shows up later and has to deal with Superman. That could be absolutely spectacular. That would be the version I would do. I think doing a Brainiac and Bottle City of Kandor story could be really cool. That would be a neat way to go, again, more of the science fiction route and do a real comic booky kind of story that's a little more cosmic, a little more out there, but you can ground it in some science fiction ideas. So yeah, that would be the story I would want to probably see with that. A lot of Superman's other rogues gallery, kind of like a lot of Spider-Man villains, don't always stand on their own real super well. So you could do like a Revenge Squad movie, I guess. Like the Sinister Six. You could do. You could have like Lex Luthor or someone. I mean, I know people are kind of tired of Lex Luthor on screen, but we still haven't had like the great Lex Luthor out on live action outside of Smallville yet. So let me also say, I'm not going to say not Lex Luthor, because of course that's my favorite Superman villain, and I still want to see a really good corporate / mad scientist Lex Luthor. I think that's the best version, mixing those things. And you could have him running like a gang of villains like Metallo and who else? The Parasite. And I've always been partial to Silver Banshee just because of her look. I think she looks super cool, and I like the Banshee okay in Supergirl, at least the look of her. But it would be cool to see that on the big screen. I don't know who immediately jumps out at you.
Parasite
Danny?
Was my first thought.
Yeah.
I love it. Superman the animated series. I'd love to see something like that where Superman's having to fight up against someone where he can't solve it by hitting him. I'd like to see something done like that where every time he hits him, it's the negative effect. It's making him stronger. I'd also like to see Toyman, so we could do Superman versus someone who's based around gadgets without doing Batman versus Superman.
Yeah,
it'd be cool to see Superman have to like put some ingenuity into his fight. I'd just kind of like to see any villain.
Anything where Superman can't win just by punching stuff.
Yeah, something where it's more intellectual, or he has to be more creative, because we don't always do a whole lot with Superman like that. We always, at least in non-comic book adaptations, we tend to do a thing where he's either got to punch his way out of it, or something along those lines. I'd personally like to see a Lex Luthor thing where it's Clark Kent who takes him down through investigative reporting.
That'd be great too. Yeah.
But that's,
and we've talked about this ad nauseum, but that's what you would do for a Telltale game.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, a good Superman movie, I think, is always going to have a bigger internal conflict than an external conflict. That's how you win people over who say Superman is too powerful and it's too easy for him to win. The stakes should not be Superman can be killed, which I think is a lot of why people have wanted to see Death of Superman, because that's when he's physically vulnerable. But if we can get past that, and I know I've said this before, but if we can get past that and do what we successfully have managed with Captain America on the big screen and make it about a villain testing his principles and making it difficult, making the superpowers the difficult thing about being Superman. How do I continue to uphold my principles without taking advantage of people accidentally, with these powers? It might be easy to win a fight, but it's not easy to be Superman. It's not easy to uphold those ideals, and that's what you have to. That's what you have to drive home in a good Superman movie, and I don't think every one of Superman's villains does that.
Yeah, and on that same kind of like mindset, the question that I was thinking of when we first talked about doing this idea that had come up quite a few Captain Logan shows ago that I wanted to bring up was, and I can't remember who asked this, so if you're here tonight and you remember asking this question, say something and I'll mention your name. But a question popped up about what would you do to make Superman relevant again, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And my answer to that would be, go classic Superman. Tell why we need that classic kind of truth, justice, American way type of Superman, and why that's not outdated. Why a character who is, kind of true to those morals and kind of the upstanding citizen, it can still exist, and kind of why we need that in kind of a modern interpretation.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. And I have heard both of these arguments, and they both make sense to varying degrees. So you have the camp that says that Superman doesn't work unless he's relatable and you make him a regular person and you can imagine yourself as Superman. And I don't think you necessarily have to do that. But I also think that you can do that and still make it, and still you can have a flawed Superman who still is Superman, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we have a flawed Captain America. He's still Captain America. I think you can kind of have your cake and eat it too on that, where again he can uphold those principles and he can be the symbol of hope and all of that, without being a two-dimensional total non-entity. And what's interesting about Superman for me, because I mean, like, yeah. I don't think every character has to be relatable. I think characters can be just as interesting because I want to be them, because I want to live up to them. At the same time, the Superman that is most interesting to me is the one for whom, again, being Superman is really, really difficult. And I actually kind of, when I read him, don't want to be a Superman because it's so hard. And he's... like he wrestles with all of his faults, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like going to work and having to leave all your crap at home. He's not allowed to show those faults. He has to be the embodiment of perfection and to the best of his ability. Otherwise, you know, people are horrified of him, and also he just feels like he has that responsibility because. If he has all those powers, and this is how it should play, if he has all those powers and he can not take over the world or take advantage of people with them, our lives, like it should be easier for us to do the right thing. That seems way harder than me not using what little power and stature I have to take advantage of people and do bad things to people. That's way easier without heat vision and without super strength and et cetera, right? It should be.
No, I agree. Kind of in the same way that Pa Kent dying from a heart attack being something that Superman can't save everyone from everything plays into some of his motivation. I think the idea that his greatest struggle is not a physical one, but one of a mental struggle and trying to uphold who he feels he needs to be and uphold that responsibility. He feels that he has to either be an ideal or be the pinnacle of the human race, however you depict that. I think that's one of the best ways to go, where the struggle with Superman is not some kind of a physical threat to him or the rest of the world. It's to how he feels he has to either hold himself up or try to hold the entire population up.
Yeah, and that's why I don't think I'm a hypocrite when I say that Death of Superman is my favorite Superman thing, because when you take when it is that physical threat and we lose him, we see if he did his job well or not, or if we were paying attention, right? Because the other really difficult thing about being Superman is you have to set the example and actually have people follow it, as opposed to doing everything for everyone. And if you create that culture of dependency and then you're gone, then you've left things worse than you found them.
Yeah, Blue Dragon 5 says he thinks that was his question he asked. So, Blue Dragon 5, congrats, because I really love that question.
Yeah, it's great.
Next question from Mr. Roboto is the super chat. He says, would a Mayor Superman lead to writing better stories, as he would be more official with the power to do the task?
Wow, that's interesting. I always have a tough time with the idea of Superman in public office, because it is a lot harder, I think, to have the abilities that he has and set that example while also representing a particular place. I mean, like, Superman is an American icon, but he doesn't speak for America. And once he does, I mean, like, he can't be the president because he wasn't born here, but once he's like the mayor or a governor or something, and he has like specific constituents, that gets a lot stickier. I think there could be some great drama with that. I immediately question Superman choosing to do that. And also, say that again.
He's a write-in. Everyone just loves him and they write him in.
Right, but I would still question Superman agreeing to it.
Yeah, I'm just saying that's a way to write that into it, where he feels, well, now it's my responsibility because everyone wanted me to do that, kind of a thing.
Yeah, but he could decline.
He could. You know.
Hey, Adam West Batman had an episode where this happened.
Of course it has.
Oh yeah, no, this happened at the end of His Honor the Penguin, Dishonor the Penguin. Both parties, he runs for mayor, and at the end, and he turns this down. But both parties call him at the end of the episode, offering him the presidential nomination. It's fantastic. And it turns him down because it's too much power. I mean, that's the thing is, I just think that if I'm Superman, that's too much power.
Yeah, I think Superman in any kind of like public office route should be like an ambassador for the U.S. If you do anything like that, you know, like where he's not so much an elected leader, but he's just kind of like, you're the ambassador for us. You're supposed to be the ideal that when other countries are when the United States is represented to other countries, we're putting forth our best, and you know, we're going to use Superman as our best, you know, ambassador. That's kind of where I would go for.
It's a better what if kind of story, like an Elseworlds thing. I really and like you have. There's precedent for this. We have President Superman of Earth 23. That's a Grant Morrison creation. That's the Black Superman president. He's a really cool character, and Morrison makes that work really well with that. So you can get some wonderful drama out of it. But in like, I don't know, regular Superman storytelling, I kind of question him doing that. I also want to mention that when I was a kid, and I've gone back to this, and it doesn't hold up great, but my single favorite Superman issue when I was a kid was an Action Comics annual. I think it was 91, 91. And it was a kind of Elseworlds type story where Superman is elected president. And they don't even deal with the fact that he's not born here and he couldn't be president. He just gets a...
Nobody asked to see his birth certificate.
Apparently not, no.
The next question from Jeffrey E. Patron. Great show, guys. But I think the question we all want to hear is Superman versus Legion. Obviously, Legion. Thoughts on Morrison's run looking back?
So yeah, Jeffrey's joking about that, probably because he knows that my eyes immediately glaze over whenever I hear about the Legion. Legion of Superheroes, I think, is what we're talking. Or are you talking about the TV show?
He's talking about Legion, as in the TV show.
The TV show, is that what he's talking about? Okay.
Yeah, because he had asked a question earlier about Legend, about a.
He's talking about Legion all the time. He loves that show, yeah. But but the reason I thought he was talking about Legion of Superheroes is because then he mentions Morrison's run, and Morrison has a kind of infamous interlude where he suddenly interrupts everything with the Legion, and my eyes glaze over, and I just don't care. But yeah, Grant Morrison's run started off great. And that first arc, minus the Legion stuff with the Bottle City of Kandor and all that, is pretty spectacular. And after that, I kind of just lose interest. I'd like to go back and maybe revisit it at some point because it's been 5 or 6 years now. I don't know where all that time went, but it's been that long. And I don't know. I just wish that he'd been allowed to like really stick to his guns and run with his original vision for that. Because the kind of, you know, crusading, almost vigilante Superman, which had not been seen in decades and decades, was a really fresh way to go with that. And it was really impressive that he was able to do that version, and it still was very much Superman. And his like taking Lex back to Mad Scientist was really cool. And that art was dynamite. Like I loved it until it got kind of dull, and we started doing that weird Mixoplex stuff, and then it petered out.
Yeah, and I haven't really read much Morrison in general, but I haven't read any of his Superman, so it's something I want to check out because it seems like a fun. Morrison is the kind of person I would want to take on Superman, and I've heard good things about him. I've got some Superman, I just haven't really read through a whole lot of it.
Well, and I am excited about him coming to Green Lantern because he will write the Green Lantern that I want to read. I bet, especially because it's core, and the space cop thing is the only thing I ever care about in Green Lantern besides Red Lanterns, which I still will never be able to explain to anyone why I love Red Lanterns so much.
You see, I just hate the color green so much.
No. Yeah, I wonder if anybody's ever taken the Green Lanterns and the Red Lanterns and done like a Christmas thing.
Surely, there's got to be something like that.
Like, right. I know there's Christmas specials, but yeah, there's got like you just.
There's got to be at least a variant cover, right, where all the lantern rings are on a tree that look like ornaments.
Yeah, that would be a cool lantern tree, right? And then like they're a cool Christmas tree, and they like blink, and yeah, it'd be great. Last year at Planet Comic Con, or I guess this year, but earlier in the year, I bought these Batman rings that I'm wearing all the time, and I almost got a Red Lantern ring. And the only reason I didn't get the Red Lantern ring is I was afraid that nobody would know what it was, and I would have to constantly explain it to people. But if that guy is there next year, I'm totally getting that ring because it's awesome.
See, I want to get just like every single like Green Lantern ring to do the Green Lantern cover where Hal's got every single ring. Or not every single ring, but like so many different rings. I love that cover. It's just such an absurd thing.
And now that you say that, that would be the ultimate like birthday or Christmas present for Eric, would be to get all the Mandarin rings.
Do they? Surely they make replicas of that, or
I've never seen them, but I would think someone would make Mandarin rings.
They've got to be on Etsy or something like that.
I mean, they've never been like live action, although Red Lantern hasn't either. But I mean, I know that Iron Man 3 he had rings, but I mean, I think like the comic book rings that all mean the different powers, I don't think have ever really been rendered anywhere.
Yeah, there's enough interest in Iron Man that surely some mom and pop shop is making that and selling it online somewhere. So it might take some looking, but that would be there.
I mean, I would argue that there are people that like Mandarin more than they like Iron Man in comics.
Very possible. I don't know much about the character. So the next question from Mario 500 now. Captain, if this were an alternate reality in which only one animated TV program related to Superman could exist, which of the animated TV programs related to him in our reality would you rather have? So if you can only have one Superman animated TV show, which one would it be?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, it's the obvious answer, right? I mean, it's the same thing that you have with Batman. I mean, I don't think we ever got better. I don't think we've ever done better than the Batman animated series, or than the Superman animated series. And I think, as much as I like Batman, I think Superman is a more consistent show. I mean, and like,
it's more underrated, I think.
Not fair, because they had time. They had to take their time finding their rhythm and their balance with Batman. So I mean, like those early episodes are great, but like there was a little bit of a learning curve, and after a while, it was more solidified into the tone it was. I also think there were kind of like different kind of stages and periods of Batman animated series. Yeah. Superman felt like kind of one smooth, fluid thing all the way through. I mean, it's a lot of one and done episodes, but it has an ongoing continuity in a way Batman didn't. And like Batman would have a lot of callbacks and things, but it didn't feel like you never knew how much time passed in between episodes. Like, it didn't matter. And I like that about that show. But Superman was where they finally started doing more archy things and an ongoing continuity. And then they stick with that when they get to Justice League and that kind of thing. But I mean, we haven't had a lot of straight up Superman shows. I mean, that's the big one. And then you've got Superman in team things, you know, in Justice League and stuff. So like, there's just not even a lot to choose from. But that, you're absolutely right. That show is underrated, and I think it's really quite brilliant.
Yeah. I'm going to go on a slightly different route, and this may be cheating because it's not technically a TV show, but Fleischer's Superman.
Yeah.
I think if we're looking at it from like a butterfly effect thing, I'd rather have that one, because I feel it's obviously it leads to Batman the Animated Series and how that show ends up becoming, because we've got the Fleischer stuff to go look back at. So that's my thing. Plus, I just love going back to rewatch those old serials. And it may not count because it's not an animated TV show, but that's what I'm picking.
No, they're really important. I mean, like, if history is altered by not having those, then I have to pick that, certainly. But if it's a desert island scenario, I would rather have the animated series, just because I can watch all of Fleischer in an afternoon. And then...
No, certainly, yeah. Yeah,
and you don't have Gilbert Godfrey as Mixelkin.
I can't do it, Gilbert Godfrey. Real quick, Kellen O'Rourke asked me, why do I have a Dawn of Justice poster? For two reasons. One, before the movie came out, I started collecting anything BVS. And two, I got that for free at the grocery store I worked at, because it was part of the ad display. And when we took it down, I just kept it. So back onto the actual Superman questions.
No, I'm glad somebody asked you that, because I've actually always wondered that, and I never thought to actually ask. Sometimes Danny's angle is a little different, so you can see that poster better. Yeah, it looks like Danny has one superhero anything in his room, and it's BVS.
Which is funny, because I've got a Batman clock right here. I've got a Batman poster right here, one over my bed, and then all of my boxed Kenner Batman the Animated Series figures displayed on my wall. And then I've got an entire shelf of my comics and then loose figures.
See, so clearly your screen setup is wrong, because It looks like you don't even bother with decorating, you know?
No, well, you can see my degree, so that's all that matters. No. But no, to actually get back to the actual like Superman questions.
I should do that. That would be real pretentious, wouldn't it?
Well, in my defense,
everybody would be like, "Hey, that's not cool. Cap's degree doesn't say Captain Logan on it."
In my defense, I didn't put that there thinking I would ever be on camera talking with people about superheroes. So
that just happens to be where your computer is, and so that's where your desk is.
That's my TV, actually. I'm at my desk right now. I just put that.
No, that's not what I mean. I'm just saying that like the shot we're getting is the way it is because that's where your computer is.
Yeah, it was just the way I had my room set up. When I finally get my second, now I'm just bragging. When I get my second one framed and I put it right next to it, then it'll get really pretentious, and I'll put it on a moving wall and just gradually bring it in closer to my computer.
You know what I should get made? And I'm talking to the guy to do it. Danny, we should make a fake certificate thing for the office that somebody asked me if I would run for. The
office of writing.
The office
of writing or whatever it
was. Of storytelling or whatever it was. Yeah.
It's a super chest, so we can go back and find it.
Yeah, wouldn't that be really ridiculous? I want to get that made up. Anyway.
Well, now I know what Cap's getting for Christmas.
I don't know. I know I say this a lot. I don't know where all this time went. We've got maybe 7 or 8 minutes left. So let's see what else we can blow through, Danny.
I'll get back to Kellen O'Rourke since you asked an actual Superman question. Cap, do you think the mistake writers make with Superman is the attempt to make him human when he's supposed to be a symbol you strive to be like? We had kind of discussed this a little bit more previously.
Yeah, I think you can take both routes. I think if you want to tell a story about Superman as the symbol versus the man, you put him more in the background like a lot of great Punisher stories. It's weird how those two characters can do the same thing in the background, but with obviously different
polar
ideas
opposites.
and different agendas, for lack of a better term. I don't like that word, but that was the word that came to me. But they would be obviously advocating for different things, but effectively, it's the same kind of idea. It's the same kind of premise where it's how does this idea personified affect other people? I think the mistake writers make most of the time when they write not great Superman stories is when they put it from Superman's perspective, but he's totally one note. There's just not anything to the guy. Like I said, he needs to be constantly challenged. We need to get in his head. It needs to be difficult for him to not cross lines. And he can be the character like Batman who refuses to change. But the drama needs to come from those opportunities for change that he refuses to take and how hard that is for him when he does that. You can tell wonderful Superman stories that are character driven and about his actually being a man and being a flawed person who's not allowed to be flawed. That's kind of the tragedy of Superman, is that he is a man who's not allowed to be a man. And how does he not break, under that pressure?
Yeah, I kind of have to disagree with Kellen on this one. I think Superman's more interesting when he is shown as the man, not the symbol, because I like the idea that Batman, the human being, in the DC universe, is the one who decides I'm going to become a symbol. And I like the idea that Superman puts being a man before being a symbol. I like that kind of dynamic between the two, and I like seeing Superman stories that are more about him being a man and more of like there's humanity to him, even though he's not technically human. I kind of like those stories more than just I got to be a symbol type of a thing. I feel like that, at least for me, those stories are always more interesting to me.
Yeah, and I mean, there's an inherent dichotomy in Superman that's kind of hard to reconcile that I always think is really interesting, where he's all about truth and justice, and he has a secret identity.
Yeah.
He has to lie in order to do what he does.
Lie by omission.
He's a walking contradiction, and but it has to be. It's the, I mean, like Daredevil, but it's a little bit more benign, right? Like he can't help it because of it would be impossible to do his job. And the thing is, with somebody like Superman, in order for him to look like the perfect figure that he can't actually live up to, but he feels like he has to try to look like. He also has to, in his private life, be a man, have a as close to a regular life as he can, because otherwise and we do this with a lot of superhero stories now, but otherwise it's easy for him to lose touch with his humanity. And so in order for him to be that perfect symbol, he also has to be the flawed man.
Yeah. We've got a super chat. I think I might have missed one earlier too. If not, no, I didn't. Okay, sorry. From Mr. Roboto, he says, "What will you ask Jor-El when you go to heaven?"
That's great. So on Counting Crypt the Freaks, I do a segment called Questions to Ask Jor-El when I get to heaven, because I think that the Jor-El in that show is basically God, because he can do and he's not even a real person anymore. Of course, he is the computer generated memories of a man that lived, but he's able to do anything that the script needs him to do at the time, including predicting the future, knowing what destiny is, putting a big S tattoo on Superman or on Clark's chest. He can do anything he wants to. And so anything I don't understand about Smallville, I say I'm going to ask that to Jor-El when I get to heaven. Man, what would be like the one thing? Because I want to make it Superman. What would be the thing Superman related?
Why did you pick Jor-El?
Well, and I mean, very often we know that answer. It's different for different versions, you know?
That would just be mine, because it's kind of like that.
You're taking this too seriously. No, I'm sorry. I am.
It's just always one of those things that blows me. It's like, why does he look so much like a human? I'd rather, that's just me getting into like the super nitty gritty of finding and looking for things that are a flaw or too much of a conceit. But no, I'd probably ask him, were those lottery numbers I was thinking of really going to win that one time, or no? So,
yeah, it would probably be something about the actual immortality of Superman. Like how far does he go, really?
Why can't anyone see past the glasses? That's what.
Sure, that's pretty good. Why all the Jor-El ex machina? There is, man. There's a lot of Jor-El ex machina. I love that. Oh, can I steal that? Can I use that in some Counting Crypt the Freaks? And once again, Jor-El ex machina.
Well, that's going to be a t-shirt.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's great. Thanks for asking that question.
Yeah, Blue Dragon 5 asked, since we haven't gotten a Lex Luthor specific question, I want to get to this one, even though we've gotten to a question of his. What is the best Lex Luthor moment from anything?
Wow! Oh, boy, that's tough. Do you have one?
Well, I was going to guess what yours is, and it's Smallville Lex, white suit, black glove.
Oh, it has to be. I don't know if that's the best moment. That was one of the moments that most freaked me the heck out in when that show was on, because I mean we're like 3 or 4 episodes in, or maybe 5, and they give us a glimpse of President Lex, and I was just like, oh, it hits me right here. That was such a big deal. Man, I feel really put on the spot because there are a lot of great ones, and I'm afraid I'm gonna miss something major. Ding 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 ding. Ding 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 ding. No. Yeah, that is absolutely the correct answer. But that's wrong. Yes, clearly that's the correct answer. No, one that's way up there is, and I mean, like, I hesitate to say this because it ultimately ends up being one of those Smallville, like, somebody's not quite themselves thing and they're like drugged or something. But just the image of Lex in season 3 in this, I'm talking Smallville. My answer is obviously going to be a Smallville Lex moment. But Lex in the insane asylum in the straitjacket with Johnny Cash's hurt. It's a great scene. That's really good stuff. The cliffhanger between 1 and 2, where he's trying to decide if he's going to let his father die, I think is wonderful. there are some great moments with him and his dad. The bit in season 3, as much as I'm never sure about the Kawachi Cave stuff and how convoluted all of that is. When he says maybe the hero of the story is Sagith, I love that a lot. No, there's a lot of answers to that.
Killer O'Rourke says his line from, I guess it's Justice League, where Flash is in his body and he goes, "You're gonna wash your hands?" "No, because I'm evil." I was trying to think of a good one from Justice League because that's where I most know Lex from. That's a great one, even though it's not technically Lex, I guess.
That's funny. Just as much of a love-hate relationship as I have with Smallville, it's always weird just how much I love that character and that performance. It's Danny, it's paradoxical.
We've got a super chat from David Crabtree. Hey, David. He says, "Hey, Cap and Danny, what is your favorite on-screen version / performance of Lois Lane? Number 1 for me is Erica Durance. A close second is Terry Hatcher."
I love Terry Hatcher so much. That is probably my answer. I really like the performance in Man of Steel. They don't give her anything to do, and of course, we talk about this a lot, but what she is given to do is kind of at the heart of that. What makes that Superman not really Superman, and his kind of moral ambiguity and all of that. But and his potential to become a despot. But I like her a lot. I didn't even talk about her in the rewind because I didn't have anything to say about the character. I just liked the performance a lot, and that casting choice. But yeah, Terry Hatcher is so spunky and so sarcastic, and she is what I think of when I think of Lois Lane. We've had a whole bunch of those at this point, and of course, I mean, second or third would have to be the black and white Adventures of Superman version. I mean, she's quintessential. She's quintessential for old school Lois Lane. You almost have to split them up into, where you have the, like 1950s version and then the more, updated kind of, I almost said working woman version. I mean, they're both that, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. I really like Margot Kidder. That's kind of my go-to for Lois.
Yeah. I have, what's weird about Margot Kidder is I think she's a weird choice until you put her with Christopher Reeve. Like, that pairing works wonderfully, and it just like her casting choice seems counterintuitive without him. But it's that combination, and that's why I can't say she's my favorite, because it's, and I mean, like, I guess you always need good chemistry with Superman, but like I couldn't. Here's the thing: I could see a Terry Hatcher spinoff with Lois Lane in a way I could not see a Margot Kidder spinoff.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's just when I think outside of Superman the animated series, it's about the only one I really think of is Margot Kidder. So that's kind of my, well, I can't really say that because now I kind of think more Amy Adams just because I have a huge crush on Amy Adams. But
have you ever seen the Lois and Clark?
No, I haven't. When the DC Universe launches, I think that show is going to be on there, so it'll be one of the things.
We will do some of that. I'm gonna
awesome.
I'm gonna make you watch some of that. We should talk about that.
Awesome.
We're going to go ahead and finish up here in a second. I think we have a couple more super chats we'll go ahead and knock out real quick, and then we're going to bid you all adieu. Go ahead, Danny.
Okay, the next one from BAG Studios. What direction would you take a Superman Returns to? Superman Goes Back.
Say that again?
What direction? Yeah, what direction would you take a Superman Returns to, which would be called Superman Goes Back again?
Oh, Superman Returns 2. I see what you did there. Yeah. I gotta say, I'm not saying that was a completely unsalvageable mess, but I'm glad we didn't get more of that because I did not need Superman with a kid. I didn't need Superman with that kid. I didn't need that Superman the way that kid happens and with the kind of, stalker eyes, and I just didn't need that. So I'm kind of glad that never happened. What exactly you would do with that? I don't know. It's much easier to answer the how do you make Superman Returns interesting and not boring question than it is what do you do with a sequel to that. I guess that's when you would have finally started doing comic book stuff, right? I mean, like, I guess my pitch for Superman Returns would be there was something he met when he was out there that has followed him back.
Yeah, that's where you do either, obviously, a Brainiac or a Lobo or some what's the character from?
What would be the weirdest turn with that? It's like pseudo Christopher Reeve. Suddenly Lobo shows up, and we've got to reel it in to make it PG-13 if we can. Oh, that's the best. But we still use like whoa. I was like, what dropped? My microphone dropped all of a sudden.
That's why it was so loud.
Oh, that would be absolutely insane. We still use the that theme and that soundtrack. And
who is in Superman the Animated Series? Who is the collector type character that Superman and Lobo have to face up against? Because that would be a cool one to do in that like Christopher Reeves type of.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. I forget.
Yeah, I'm like on the name because when I recently went back and rewatched it, and all I could think of it's like Jabba the Hutt meets the Collector.
Yeah, I haven't seen that in 7 or 8 years, probably.
Shame on you, Cap.
I got to go back to it, but well, you know, I got to watch all these requests and things for rewind and stuff, man. No, I do want to do another watch of that soon. I will say this will be blasphemy to some people. I will say I have been catching up on Arrow finally, and
golf clap.
Not horribly hating it. Season 5 is I'm going to talk about this on the Omnibus this week, but season 5's okay compared to 3 and 4. Like it's definitely their third best season.
Yeah, people talked about that one as no, it's good again. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll wait and see.
It's better again, certainly. Like if I had to put it up on par with anything, it's at least as good as the second half of season 2, which isn't saying a lot because that's super convoluted, but it's at least not like horribly. It's not horribly convoluted or anything. So yeah, I would give it that. I still can't decide if any of the people I'm supposed to see as a hero are really actually heroes. It has that problem, but
is season 5 the one where he's got like his little like Arrow ink type of thing where he's got all the I have no interest in that.
But then that continues into 6.
Of course it does.
To the point where the opening with the arrow symbol, they put everybody else's symbol behind it. They make a really big deal out of the fact that this is an ensemble show now.
Well, that's my train, but that's just kind of obnoxious because that's what Legion or not Legion. Is it Legion? Legends of Tomorrow.
Legends, yeah.
That's your ensemble cast. Anyways,
yeah,
the next
that's right.
Super chat from Mr. Roboto. Cap, do you have any Lana Lang comics?
Lana Lang comics? Just comics with Lana Lang in them?
I think so, because he just says, do you have a Lana Lang? And then he clarifies later in the comments, Lana Lang comics.
I probably own a couple of issues where she shows up. I can't think of anything in particular where I'm like, this is the best comic Lana Lang shows up in.
Reign of the Lana Langs.
I mean, we've reviewed a couple of Superman Origins that, of course, she's a big part of, but I don't actually own most of those. They were trades that Eric had that I read with him. But so we talked about her in Burn and stuff. But yeah.
The next question is another super chat from Mr. Weeping Dalek. Cool name.
That's cool.
Have you watched Better Call Saul yet?
I have. I'm almost caught up. And I did not review that on Primetime Crisis this last week just because we were so covered up with things, and I didn't know how much interest there was in that. But yeah, I have binged back. I say binged back. I went to where I left off toward the end of season 1, and I binged up through the beginning of the new season, which I'm not watching as it comes out. I'm going to wait until all of it drops. But at first, I was having a hard time getting into that show. It's one of those shows where it's like, this is really, it's like it's the thing I had with some of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. where I'm like, this is pretty well written. I just don't care. And the more it went on, the less I had that. And it starts to become more Breaking Bad-esque as it goes along, with still a little bit more of a kind of quirky sensibility about it just because of its main character. But the way it fills in a lot of the gaps for Breaking Bad is really cool. It had some prequelitis, issues at the beginning. I think now it's becoming a really good example of how to do a prequel right. And the parallels between Jimmy, Saul Goodman, and Walter White are really interesting, and the ways in which they are not at all the same person, especially in that one of them becomes a guy who loves crime and doesn't mind killing and comes up with excuses to kill, and the other person is just too darn good at manipulating people not to, but he actually has a good heart inside. It was the last character, or one of the last characters I would have thought I would want a whole show about, and it's quite spectacular, actually. I really like it, and part of the reason I went ahead and pushed on and kept watching, partly because I love Michael McKean, and he's wonderful, but also because eventually we get to the chicken restaurant and to my favorite character in Breaking Bad, the guy who runs the chicken restaurant, which is of course a front for drug smuggling, and he's great. So yeah, Gus Fring.
Yeah, I've been wanting to finally go back and actually watch through it because they've got Mike Ehrmantraut back in it, and I love Mike. So.
Oh yeah, and he starts from the. I mean, he's one of the main cast members all the way through, and a lot of subplots in that show because. Like I said, it kind of becomes setting the stage for Breaking Bad, which I would think I wouldn't like, but I've ended up really getting invested in it. But like you can't do, even with like 11 or 12 episode seasons or however long that show is, you can't really fill out enough time with Jimmy's stories, so you've got to have subplots, and they converge and intertwine certainly, but it is as much the Mike Ehrmantraut show in a lot of ways as it is the Saul Goodman show.
Awesome. It's been on my kind of like, at some point I need to finally watch it, which is funny because
if you feel like that first season is too slow, bear with it.
Okay, that's good to know, because one of the things I remember really hearing about Breaking Bad was if you're not hooked by that first episode, it's just not a show for you. And I kind of went into Better Call Saul kind of with that attitude, which is a mistake on my part of not trying to give that show its fair due as far as growing pains go. And for that first episode, it was like, eh.
Also, I have rarely disagreed with a statement more than I disagree with that with Breaking Bad, because I had to watch 4 or 5 episodes before I really got sucked in. I had reservations early on, and also just like, I don't know if this is for me. I don't like drug culture shows usually. This is the thing I don't think I'm gonna like, and I fell in love with it, and I've watched it probably 3 times.
Nice. I just went back and watched Weeds, which was the like. It's wrong to say. It's not necessarily a prototype to Breaking Bad, but it's the like suburbanite turned drug dealer show before Breaking Bad, and it's not good. After the first 3 seasons, I think are pretty good for what it is, and it's more of a comedy than like a drama. But once you get to the seasons that are made after Breaking Bad has come out, and you can see where the writers on the show took very obvious influences from Breaking Bad, it just feels like you've abandoned what you had and you're trying to jump on this trend, which is not really what you were. And it's just like, if I want to see this, I'll just go watch Breaking Bad again. So I don't like anything past like season 3.
Interesting. The other thing I would say about Better Call Saul is that it is as much about the law and being a lawyer as Breaking Bad was about the drug culture and chemistry.
Interesting. So it's
a legal show. It's a really good legal show. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes me want to go back.
And it's about mental illness, and yeah, no, it's quite good.
Yeah, now I'm far more excited about actually going and watching that show, because at first it was kind of a take it or leave it type of thing for me.
Well, Danny, I think that's about everything for the moment. Yeah.
I believe so. I think we've got all of the super chats answered.
Cool. Well, Connor Nielsen says he was hooked by Breaking Bad from the moment that acid-bathed corpse came falling through the ceiling. That was the thing that unnerved me to the point where I wasn't sure if I could keep watching, but it was also the thing that made me think I can't stop watching this show. No, you're absolutely right. And I think that is 3rd episode, maybe 2nd. Maybe that's the end of the 2nd episode.
Yeah, 2nd. Yeah, it's the cliffhanger, not cliffhanger. It's the end going into season 3 or episode 3. If I'm remembering it correctly, either way, it ends one of the earlier episodes.
Well, folks, thanks so much for watching. Sure appreciate it. Somebody said they were having a hard time making a super chat. That it wouldn't let them post unless it was a $5 super chat, and seemed kind of bummed that didn't work out. So sorry about that. Try again next time. That sounds like some kind of really strange technical glitch, because we got we got like $2 and $3 ones today. So
yeah, there were a couple $2.99 ones, or there was a couple $1.99 ones. I'm not going to actually give a super chat. I guess it's not going to let me show it because I'm a moderator.
You're a moderator. Chat. It probably wouldn't let you. Yeah.
No, it's not giving me any of the options to see. Sorry, I was going to try and troubleshoot it for you.
Have you tried plugging it, unplugging it, and plugging it back in?
Yeah. Have you turned off the YouTube?
Have you turned off the super chat? But thanks for the attempt at the support. We sure appreciate it. And you guys are all absolutely wonderful. You guys are why we do this. And thanks a bunch for watching. If you would like to support the show regularly, go to patreon.com/geekvolution. And for just $2 a month, you can get early episodes of some videos. Danny, I'm going to start. I also am announcing this on the Omnibus this week, but I'll mention it here too. The videos we do early, which I haven't posted any lately, but Superhero Rewind is about to come back. Kind of Crypto Freaks I do this with. Videos that we do early, I'm going to start posting 3 days early to Patreon instead of 24 hours. So that will be a little bit more of a benefit for you there. I'm also going to start archiving podcast versions of old Superhero Rewinds at the $2 tier on Patreon. So we had a podcast feed. I'm going to have to take it down because not enough people are looking at it, and I'm having to pay for it monthly, and there just doesn't seem to be enough interest. So I thought for the folks that really wanted that, I would just make it a Patreon perk, because I suspect the majority of people that are listening to that are already patrons anyway. So I'm gonna, and I've never backed up the whole thing. So I'm gonna start pretty soon making I don't know when. I'm going to do that as soon as I can. But I'm going to start making podcast versions of all the old Superhero Rewinds available there. And at the $2 tier, you also get access to Geekvolution After Dark. And Danny, we got to get you on one of those at some point in the near future.
I'd love to do an After Dark. That would be so much fun, I think. Especially
we have a great time with that show. It's uncensored. We sometimes booze it up a little bit. It gets silly on that show.
I'll have to buy some like Hellboy whiskey for the occasion.
Yeah, have you had that yet?
No, I haven't.
I don't know if you can find it now, but
I've tried Fireball. Wasn't a big fan of Fireball, so
it's not everybody's thing. It's also like getting kind of fatty. A lot of people don't like it just because it's so popular. They're like, I don't do Fireball. That's what everybody does. I'm like, but I was drinking that before it was cool. So I'm not a big whiskey guy, but I discovered, and I don't mean to sound like I'm a giant drinker or anything. I drink occasionally. I discovered a peach whiskey that is absolutely to die for. If you like peach flavored things, it's awesome. But
what anyway, because I usually just stick to the normal like Jack Daniels or Jim Beam when I drink, and I don't drink a whole lot either. Like it's months in between when I have a drink. So
yeah, that stuff's okay. I'll do it occasionally. There's Eric.
What's up?
But anyway, well, folks, that's going to do it for us tonight. Thanks a bunch for watching. We sure appreciate it. And we will see you again next Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central for a regular Ask Me Anything show. So bring your questions and ask me anything. In the meantime, I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Danny.
And we will see you again next week.